Your 20 years here are over, Brennan. Kyle Donovan said it like he was ordering a sandwich, not executing a career. First day on the job, and this kid, couldn't have been more than 32, was already swinging his MBA around like a weapon. He didn't even sit down. Just stood there in my office doorway, tie still factory creased, watch catching the fluorescent light in that way that screams I just got promoted and want everyone to know it. I looked at him for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to catalog everything. The posture that said he'd never missed a mortgage payment, the confidence that comes from never being wrong because nobody's called you on it yet, the complete absence of sweat equity in a company I'd been holding together since he was in high school. 20 years, 15 left on a 30-year mortgage. Kids' senior year tuition due in January, 18 grand I'd saved for, planned for, built a career for. And this MBA who probably still had his parents co-sign his apartment just handed me a cardboard box. "You'll need it," I said. Calm, even. He blinked, probably expected tears or begging. Maybe some speech about loyalty or fairness. I gave him nothing. Just stood up, grabbed my coffee mug, the one that said I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right, and set it in the cardboard box I kept under my desk for exactly this kind of thing. "Security will escort you," he added, like I might steal a stapler on the way out. "Sure," I said, "just need to log out." I didn't, of course. Everything critical was already encrypted, auto-scheduled, system-bound. My calendar entries were clean, files archived. The real meat of the operation, the forecasting platform that told this company whether to expand or contract, hire or fire, invest or retreat, well, that was a different story. No dramatic exit. No slow clap. I walked past Greg Novak's cube. He looked up from his monitor, saw the box, and mouthed, "He's gonna regret this." I kept walking, past Barb Fletcher in payroll, who'd been here almost as long as me. She just shook her head. Past the ficus plant I'd watered for 3 winters. Tony Ritchie was working security that day. Good guy, ex-Navy like me. He saw me coming and stood up, but not in a confrontational way. More like respect. "You good, Tom?" "Golden, Tony." He walked me to the door. Quiet. At the glass entrance, he said low, 20 years, Tom." Pause. "They're going to regret this." "Yeah," I said. "They will." He nodded once. We both knew how these things played out. Seen it before, different uniform. The doors opened. Sunlight. Traffic noise. Some guy yelling about parking. Life just kept moving, completely indifferent to the fact that I just spent 20 years keeping this ship afloat while executives played musical chairs with the C-suite. But here's what Kyle Donovan didn't understand. What none of them wanted to understand. Those quarterly reports they loved to flash around in board meetings weren't just Excel files. They were architecture. A living system built from conditional logic, pattern recognition, predictive algorithms, and 20 years of institutional memory encoded into code. I'd built the first version during the 2008 crisis when everyone was panicking and nobody knew which way was up. Refined it through every market shift since then. Added layers after the dot-com hangover, the housing collapse, COVID supply chain chaos. Nobody else even asked how it worked. They just wanted their pretty graphs and trend lines, slapped them into PowerPoints, and called themselves strategic thinkers. I watched the building shrink in my rearview mirror. Felt nothing but calm. Not bitter, just aware. The platform was scheduled to self-lock in 48 hours if no valid credential activity was detected. That wasn't sabotage. That was protocol. My protocol. Prevents data corruption, forces recalibration, and, yeah, requires biometric confirmation. Mine, new CFO, never asked for a handoff. Never requested admin access. Just printed a termination notice and went back to whatever it is MBAs do when they're not destroying things. So I drove home, cracked a beer, opened my laptop, not to check work email. I'd already archived anything important. I opened it to check the logs. 2:43 p.m. Unauthorized access attempt. Result, denied. 2:44 p.m. Reboot sequence initiated. Estimated lockout, 47 hours, 12 minutes. I smiled, not because I wanted to watch them burn, because I didn't have to do a damn thing. They'd fired me thinking I was a cog, but I wasn't the cog. I was the engine. My son called that night. Junior at Penn State. Engineering major, like his old man should have been if I hadn't gotten practical about paying bills. "Hey, Dad, how was work?" "Interesting," I said. Took a pull from my beer. "Tell you about it later. How's that engineering project coming? Stress calculations are killing me. Professor wants us to account for dynamic load factors I've never even heard of. That's because he's teaching you the right way. The way that keeps bridges standing and buildings from falling down. We talked for 20 minutes about material science and failure points. Good kid, smart. Reminded me why I'd put up with corporate nonsense for 2 decades. Somebody had to pay for college, and I'd be damned if he started his career with 6 figures of debt. "Dad," he said before hanging up, "you ever regret staying that long?" At one place, I looked out the window. Neighbor was washing his car in the driveway. Sun was setting orange behind the houses. "Not once," I said, "but I stayed because I was building something that mattered. The day you're just filling a chair, that's when you leave. Remember that, I will." After we hung up, I sat there for a minute. Didn't tell him I got fired. Not yet. Not until I knew how this played out. He had 4 months left before graduation. Didn't need Dad's career crisis added to finals week. Then I went out to the garage. Had a '67 Mustang I'd been restoring for 3 years. Engine was half disassembled on the workbench. The socket wrench clicked as I worked on the carburetor. Credence played low on the radio. Garage smelled like motor oil and spring grass through the open door. The thing about engines, they're honest. You do the work right, they run. You cut corners, they let you know. Unlike people. My phone buzzed around 9. Text from Greg, emergency IT meeting. Kyle's trying to access the forecast model. Not going well. I set down the wrench. Took another pull from my beer. Typed back, let me know how it goes. Didn't feel like gloating. Didn't feel much of anything except that calm you get when you know you built something solid and someone else is about to learn why corners exist for a reason. By Monday morning, Kyle was already booking the executive conference room for Thursday's quarterly board review. I know because I still had access to the calendar system. Different platform, nobody thought to revoke that. He sent out an email that made me laugh out loud. Excited to present my first quarterly update. Expect streamlined insights and modernized forecast delivery. Streamlined, modernized. Corporate buzzwords for I have no idea what I'm doing. Meanwhile, deep in the server logs, the cracks were forming. IT flagged the forecasting model twice, once Sunday night, again Monday morning. Unexpected formula behavior. Credential mismatch. They opened a ticket. Some junior tech escalated it to Tier 2. Kyle closed it. Just hit resolve with no comment. Too busy Googling synonyms for synergy, I guess. From my workbench, beer in hand, Eagles on the radio now, I watched the alerts pile up in the cloud backup I'd configured years ago for disaster recovery. Not spying, just preventative monitoring. Forecast model locked. Requires biometric clearance. Admin override rejected. Credentials expired. The language was technical, but I could hear the panic underneath. Tuesday's finance meeting was painful to hear about. Greg recorded the whole thing, sent me the audio. Kyle stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, trying to explain why the projections weren't loading. "It's a permissions issue," he said. His voice had that practiced confidence you learn in business school. Tom and his generation, they built these robust foundations. But sometimes robust means rigid. We need agility in today's market. Nicole, that sharp junior analyst, raised her hand. "But sir, the formulas are returning null values." "That's not a permissions thing. That's a structural, I appreciate your input," Kyle cut her off. Smiled that MBA smile. "But I've seen this before in my previous role. We just need to modernize the architecture. Update the stack. Sometimes you have to break a few eggs." Previous role. Greg told me later Kyle had been a senior analyst at a consulting firm. For 18 months, gave PowerPoint presentations about digital transformation to companies he'd never actually worked for. I listened to the audio clip once. Deleted it. Didn't need to hear more. "Legacy," I said to Greg when he called that night. "That's what you call something when you're too lazy to learn how it works." Greg laughed, not a happy laugh. "Tom, they're freaking out. Ryan in IT said the whole finance team is panicking. Nobody can pull trend data. The dashboard's just showing static numbers from March." What's Kyle saying? That it's temporary. That he's got it under control. Pause. He doesn't have it under control, does he? Number. Wednesday morning, Kyle copy-pasted some half-done projection from an old presentation. Tried to access the platform again. Got another wall of red text and a helpful message I'd added after we had that embezzlement scare in 2019. Contact authorized architect for recalibration protocol. Act authorized. There were only 2 authorized architects. One retired in 2020. The other was currently rebuilding a transmission and watching his neighbor try to parallel park for the 4th time that week. Kyle still hadn't called. Still hadn't even acknowledged publicly that anything was wrong. But on Slack, yeah, I still had access to that too, whispers were starting. Why does the main model say Brennan's name on it? Anyone know how to update projections? Getting weird errors. Did someone check if Tom left documentation? Is Tom coming back? I finished my beer and checked the countdown. 32 hours to full lockout. Friday night, Greg showed up at my house. Didn't call first. Just pulled into the driveway with a six-pack and walked into the garage like we'd planned it. Heard through the grapevine, he said, handing me a beer. We didn't talk much at first. Just stood there in the garage, two guys who'd survived enough corporate stupidity to know when to speak and when to just let silence do the work. They're losing their minds, Greg finally said. Ryan said Kyle tried to get IT to force reset the system. Ryan told him that would corrupt 12 years of data. Kyle told him to do it anyway. Did he? Hell no. Ryan said he'd need written authorization from the CEO and legal. Suddenly, Kyle backed off. Greg took a long pull from his beer. Tom, what happens Thursday? Thursday's the quarterly board meeting. And they're going to present forecasts they don't have, built on a system they can't access, to a board that's expecting numbers that don't exist. Greg looked at me. You planned this. I built a system with proper security protocols. That's all I did. He nodded slowly. They're going to call you. Probably. You going to answer? I looked out at the driveway. The Mustang sitting there, half-restored, patient. Eventually, Greg left around 11. Didn't say much else. Didn't need to. We both knew how this ended. Thursday morning, 7:42 a.m. In the executive conference room, Kyle was trying to open the forecast model for his big presentation. His assistant had the tablet ready, projector humming. The room smelled like expensive coffee and flop sweat. He tapped the screen, waited, tapped again. Black screen. Then red text, bright and unapologetic. Access denied, authorized user T. Brennan credential signature, required. I know the exact time because the system logged it. Because I was sitting on my back porch with my laptop watching every failed attempt ping through like a heartbeat. The temperature in that room dropped 10 degrees. Kyle muttered something, probably a prayer, and jabbed the screen like it owed him money. Is that supposed to happen? His assistant asked. Get IT now. 6 floors down, the IT team had already seen the lockout attempt. They'd seen 6 of them. 3 from Kyle, 2 from finance, 1 from some marketing guy who thought refreshing the browser would fix everything. It didn't. Ryan Murphy, I'd trained him when he thought pivot tables were actual furniture, typed commands, shook his head. No dice, encryption solid. We can't bypass without a full system wipe. A wipe? Some suit who'd wandered down looked panicked. Yeah, Ryan said. We'd lose 12 years of historical data. Pattern recognition. Market behavior models. Basically everything that makes this more than just a fancy spreadsheet. Back upstairs, Kyle took a deep breath and smiled through it like everything was fine. The car was on fire and headed for a cliff, but he was still holding the steering wheel. Minor glitch, he told the executives filing in. Outdated permissions. Happens with legacy systems. There was that word again. Legacy. Like it was my middle name instead of his lifeline. He started flipping through a backup presentation built on guesswork and ego. His phone kept pinging. Every failed override attempt sent him another notification. After the 5th one, he muted it. Me? I was on my back porch, second coffee of the morning, watching my neighbor finally nail that parallel park on try number 5. Laptop open, VPN active. Each failed login pinged like a doorbell. I could hear the boardroom through the system logs, chairs scraping, someone coughing, the distinct digital signature of powerful people realizing they weren't in control. 7:42 a.m. Unauthorized credential. 7:43 a.m. Multi-factor validation failure. 7:45 a.m. Admin override blocked. Best part? Each rejection logged the device ID with a timestamp and a header that said, escalation path. T. Brennan. My name. Stamped across every denial like a signature. I bit into my toast and watched 2 crows fight over a bagel on the sidewalk. Chaos everywhere you look. 9:02 a.m. The quarterly meeting officially started. The boardroom smelled like expensive leather and desperation. The coffee was poured, donuts untouched, and behind Kyle, that same red error message blinked on the screen like a neon sign. Where are the projections? That was Russell, one of the old guard board members. Voice like gravel, patience worn thin by 40 years of watching young executives reinvent wheels. We're sitting on 3 pending acquisitions. I need numbers. Kyle forced a chuckle, sweat starting to show at his temples. Minor technical issue with our legacy forecasting tools. I've compiled some provisional data. He clicked to the next slide. A bar chart that looked like a raccoon built it in PowerPoint at 3A. This isn't the model, someone said flatly. Angela from the audit committee. She'd been reading quarterly reports since before Kyle was born. No, Kyle admitted. Voice getting tight. We've got our team working on it. The actual file is temporarily inaccessible. Why does it say Brennan's name? Brett Cassidy, dialing in from somewhere tropical, probably between golf holes. He zoomed in on the shared screen like he was reading a warrant. Right there. T. Brennan, authorized user. Silence. You could hear the air conditioning. Kyle swallowed hard. Tom Brennan built the original system. I've been working on untangling some outdated security protocols. Outdated? Russell leaned forward, reading glasses sliding down his nose. That system's been accurate within 2% for how many years? Kyle opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. 8 years, Angela said quietly, looking at her notes. Predicted the supply chain crunch in 2021. Called the Q3 dip in 2023. Flagged the Henderson acquisition as overvalued. Saved us $20 million when they went under 6 months later. More silence. Someone's phone buzzed. Nobody reached for it. So we fired the one person who understood the system that runs this company, Russell said. Not a question. A statement. He looked at Rick Callahan, the CEO, who'd been sitting stone still at the head of the table. That about sum it up, Rick? From my porch, I couldn't hear them, but I could read the logs. The failed attempts had stopped. No more pinging. They'd given up trying to force their way in. Smart. Finally. Rick Callahan stood up without a word and walked out of the boardroom. The board watched him go. Brett stopped typing on his laptop. Angela just put her head in her hands. Russell leaned back in his chair and said something to the person next to him. Probably something about firing the wrong person. In his office, Rick didn't pace or shout. He just stood at the window, jaw tight, watching landscapers work on the grounds while his company's forecast infrastructure lay 6 feet under. He called it, I know because Ryan texted me the transcript later. Tell me exactly who has access to the forecasting system. Pause. Then Ryan's voice, strained but professional. Only one user profile is authorized to unlock the predictive engine. All other accounts are view-only or dependent on admin shadowing. And that user is Tom Brennan. His profile still listed as primary architect. Biometric encrypted. 2-factor tied to his personal credentials. No backdoor, no override, no secondary access. Long silence. We tried a sandboxed override yesterday, Ryan added. It flagged corruption warnings across the entire data set. Sir, we can't even simulate the forecast. We'd be running completely blind. Rick hung up, pulled up my employee file. Last performance review from 6 months ago. Reliable, systems-minded, institutional knowledge asset. Tends to retain key responsibilities. Recommend delegation training and succession planning. Recommend succession planning. Someone had written that. Someone had known. And nobody had done a damn thing about it. Below the review, Kyle's termination authorization. Dated 4 days ago. Single signature. No counter-signature from HR. No board approval. Just Kyle Donovan's name on a line, ending 20 years like it was a gym membership. Rick hit the intercom. Get me Tom Brennan's number. His personal cell. Now. His assistant came back 2 minutes later. Sir, he's not in the employee directory anymore. Then find it another way. How? Call someone who has it. Call everyone who has it. I don't care. Get me that number in the next 10 minutes or you're going to have a very bad day. She found it. People talk. Always do. My phone rang at 8:47 p.m. that night. I was painting the deck. Sun going down, brush in hand, old jeans with paint stains from 3 houses ago. Private number on the screen. I let it ring twice. 3 times. Bargaining power peaks in silence. On the 4th ring, I set down the brush and answered. Tom, Rick's voice. Low, controlled, tired in a way that said too many hours and one very big mistake. I know this isn't protocol, but protocol isn't working. No kidding, the board's still here. Waited all day. The only thing we can pull up from your forecasting model is your name. In red, with 2 words underneath. Let me guess. Access denied. Pause. I could hear him breathing, thinking, calculating. Explain. I looked out at the yard. Deck half painted. Neighbor's sprinkler going. Smell of fresh paint and cut grass. That depends. You want a short-term fix or a permanent solution? Long pause. The calculating kind. The kind where you hear someone realize they're not holding the cards anymore. That maybe they never were. I'm listening, Rick said finally. I set down the paintbrush. Wiped my hands on a rag. Kyle made a call without doing his homework. You trusted him to streamline something he didn't understand. Now you're flying blind into Q4 with 3 acquisitions on the table and no verified financial trajectory. Silence on the other end. Not defensive, just listening. Maybe for the first time. Tom, he said finally. Quieter now, just tell me what it takes. There it was. Command to request. Authority to negotiation. No more backroom nonsense, I said. No intermediaries. No, can you help us out as a favor phone calls. You want this fixed, we do it right. Official and clean. And full reinstatement. Same system authority. But this time I report directly to you. No CFO in my chain of command. No interference. He didn't argue. Smart man. And compensation, I said. We'll discuss a performance clause. One that reflects actual value, not what some HR algorithm thinks the market says I'm worth. A pause. Then surprisingly, a soft laugh. Tired but genuine. Fair enough. I could hear chairs scraping through his phone. People murmuring. Maybe someone realizing that the most powerful person in the company wasn't even in the building. Hadn't been for 4 days. Tom, he said again. Thank you for taking the call. I didn't do it for you. I looked at the half-painted deck, the house behind it. I did it because my kid's senior year tuition is due in January, and I'm not starting over at 52. Truth, not spite. Just the math of middle age and mortgages and the difference between principal and poverty. Understood, Rick said. Can you come in tomorrow? I'll be there at 9. I hung up, calm. Still in my work boots, jeans with paint on them. Because sometimes power doesn't roar. Sometimes it just waits for the world to come knocking. The next morning I didn't rush. No victory lap. Just slacks, a clean shirt, steady walk through the lobby like I'd never left. Because in the ways that mattered, I hadn't. The receptionist froze when she saw me. Is someone expecting you? They are now. Elevator to 23. Executive floor. The hallway buzzed with tension. Whispers cut off mid-sentence. Assistants moved like they were dodging sniper fire. Someone dropped a coffee cup. Nobody stopped to clean it up. When I stepped into the boardroom, the energy snapped like a rubber band stretched too far. Kyle was at the far end of the table, pale as printer paper, hands clenched around a legal pad he hadn't written on. His jaw twitched when he saw me. No greeting, just avoidance, like eye contact might be fatal. Rick stood. Thank you for coming. I nodded, set down my laptop, clicked it open. Projector hummed to life behind me, screen bathing the room in clean, pale glow. I won't waste your time, I said. Voice steady, clear. You're here because the forecasting system locked. It didn't crash. It wasn't a bug. It did exactly what it was designed to do. Click. A diagram appeared. Complex, layered, but readable. Like the inner workings of a vault. This system isn't a spreadsheet. It's predictive architecture. It ingests 12 categories of dynamic data across 5 departments. Weighs them against historical performance, adjusts based on real-time market volatility pulled from 3 APIs. I pointed to a red square on the diagram. This is the security protocol I built after the 2019 internal breach when someone tried to cook the numbers for bonus money. I was asked to make sure it wouldn't happen again. So I did. Murmurs around the table. Russell nodded slowly. Angela was taking notes. That protocol encrypts core logic and binds it to biometric credentials. Mine. Because I was the only one trained to recalibrate without corrupting the data structure. The room went quiet. Just the projector's hum and the sound of an empire realizing its heartbeat had a name. Click. I pulled up the audit log. 17 failed attempts. Timestamps. Device IDs. That final red banner they all saw yesterday morning. I didn't lock you out, I said, turning to face them. You did that when you removed me without handoff, without credential transition, without even a basic knowledge transfer session. This wasn't sabotage. It was negligence. Someone near the center spoke, low and sharp. Who authorized his termination without board approval? All heads turned. Kyle looked like he was melting into his chair. He started, voice dry as chalk. It was standard restructuring. I was told to streamline. No, you weren't. Rick's voice cut clean through the room. That was never authorized at board level. You didn't even brief me. Russell leaned forward, reading glasses catching the light. So you cut the architect of our entire forecasting infrastructure to streamline. Cut the one person who built the system, maintained it, and kept it running accurately for 8 years. That sound about right? Kyle tried to shift blame. He never documented the system clearly. He held on to access. I cut him off. Calm. There were 2 formal requests in the last 5 years to document full architecture. Both times I offered to train a successor. Both times the request got dropped for more urgent priorities. Click. I have the emails. Inbox receipts appeared on screen. Time-stamped, chain of command. My offers. Their responses. All there. Nobody defended him. The room stayed quiet except for someone typing notes. Rick finally broke the silence. This is done. Kyle's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again like he'd forgotten how to form words without authority behind them. He stood slowly, gathered his untouched legal pad, started toward the door, walking under fluorescent lights like a man realizing the fall doesn't kill you, the landing does. He didn't even make it to the hallway. Rick stepped to the door and called after him, voice sharp as broken glass. Actually, Kyle, one more thing. The whole room went still. Kyle turned, already defeated. You're done. Effective immediately. No theatrics, no shouting, just the clean corporate execution. Kyle blinked. Legal was already walking in with an envelope and a folder. The board didn't flinch. Didn't protest. Just watched him leave with nothing but squeaking loafers and a silence so heavy it had mass. Rick closed the door. Turned back to me. I believe we owe you a proper conversation. We'd like to offer reinstatement, he said. Senior role. Title of your choosing. Significant compensation increase. Russell chimed in. Direct reporting line to Rick. No CFO interference. Angela added. Whatever resources you need for documentation, training, scaling. No questions asked. I looked around the table. Same people who once called me reliable, low maintenance. The guy who just did his job. Now they weren't just looking. They were waiting. I clicked a few keys. The projector flickered, then filled with soft, familiar blue. The dashboard loaded seamlessly. Charts bloomed like spring after frost. Revenue arcs, expense curves, churn predictions. All there, alive, accurate, awake. The board exhaled in unison. Someone whispered, "Thank God." I closed my laptop with a soft click, walked to the empty seat at the head of the table, set the laptop down, smoothed my sleeve. Now, I said, looking around at the most powerful people in the company. Before we talk quarterly reports, let's discuss my reporting structure. And the clause that says no one, and I mean no one, touches my systems without written authorization from me and this board. We clear? Nods all around. No hesitation. Good, I said. Now we can talk about quarter four. No cheers, no applause, just heads nodding. Respect earned, not given. Angela smiled. Russell raised his coffee cup slightly. Brett unmuted his line to say, "Welcome back." Inside, I felt no gloating, no rage, just that deep, quiet satisfaction of watching everything fall exactly into place. They'd tried to erase me. Now I was the only name that mattered. Later that week, I found Nicole in the break room, the junior analyst who'd spotted the formula errors. "Nicole, right? You flagged those formula discrepancies Tuesday." She nodded, nervous. Probably thought I was there to lecture her about speaking up. "Good eye," I said. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. You want to learn how this system actually works, not just how to use it?" Her eyes widened. "Really? Really? I'm going to need someone who asks real questions. Someone who understands that robust isn't the same as rigid. Interested? Absolutely. Good, we start Monday." And somewhere out there, Kyle Donovan was probably updating his LinkedIn profile, learning the hard way that you can't download 20 years of experience from an MBA program. Me, I had a deck to finish painting, and a '67 Mustang that wasn't going to rebuild itself. But first, those quarterly reports weren't going to run themselves. I opened my laptop and got to work.